It's time for Locked On Bengals to put on Bengals GM hat. What would we do mock draft Monday?
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're the Locked On Bengals podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you're new to the show, if you subscribe, 1, thank you. 2, really supports us. 3, makes it easy to get this content every day, makes it easy to join the tens of thousands of others of Bengals fans who are either part of the Everyday Club or part of the club that makes us their first listen every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, where you can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed at FanDuel.com/locked on, where you can get started. And James, today we dive into a couple of homebrewed, no simulator involved mock draft Monday scenarios. What would we do if we were Duke Tobin and Mike Brown combined into one Bengals decision maker? We've got 2 scenarios for you. Going through 7 rounds. What do you got? How are we starting this thing?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear, and our listeners and viewers know what I would do at pick 18. I would will Brock Bowers into existence, but we also are going to try to be realistic with this. And I just don't think he makes it to 18. I think there's going to be too many teams, whether it's a dark horse team like the Bears, who have been rumored to be interested in Bowers now. Obviously, the Jets and Colts have been mentioned, the Broncos, the Saints. Who knows? One of those teams are going to take Brock Bowers. And we talked about this when we set the draft board. Olu Fashanu, to me, would be the target here. I also think he's going to be gone. So I go back to the drawing board, and I think Amarius Mims is going to be there and be available at 18. And that's who I would take. And I would take him for a few reasons. One, I think that he has a chance to be the best tackle in this class, and that's really hard to find at pick 18. The risk is there because we haven't seen it, but I'm comfortable with just talking to anyone, whether it was Dane last week. Obviously, we've had Joe Goodberry on, whoever you want to discuss this topic with. I'm comfortable taking him at 18 because I think the risk is there. There's some risk, but I think the reward is much, much higher. And there's also a chance that he doesn't hit his ceiling, but also doesn't bust. And it's just a solid player, which I don't think we've really talked about Amarius Mims in that way. And I think his solid is really darn good. So give me Amarius Mims. I would be happy with him at 18, and that's who I would take.
And with Trent Brown expected to start the year at right tackle, if Mims comes in and he needs time to cook, he needs time to develop that awareness that only comes with experience, which you need reps for. So hopefully he would get them in the preseason if you were the Bengals' first round pick. Then you have Trent Brown, who can get you started, who's been around the NFL for a long time, who's seen everything you can see in the NFL. And then you got Amarius Mims cooking in the background, ready to unleash that freaky frame and ridiculous way to carry 340 pounds with a ridiculously low body fat percentage and all of that athletic upside. From an expected draft position perspective, shout out to Benj Robinson, who Grinding the Mocks is his website where he tracks where players are expected to be drafted based on scraping a ton of mock drafts from around the internet. Amarius Mims is the most likely to be available to the Bengals based on that data as well. Brock Bowers, while we would all like to dream, has maintained throughout the process an expected draft position between, 9 and 11 for this entire process, maybe dipping down to 12 at one point. Olu Fashanu, who would also be my first choice, I believe, at tackle. If he were to fall, which he could, because some teams, I guess, do have some concerns there, has an expected draft position at 13. JC Latham, who would also be in consideration for me, and I am in lockstep with you here for this first round pick, James, of looking at tackle. JC Latham expected draft position at 16, and Mims, I think I mentioned earlier, in the early 20s at 21.8, 22 roughly. He's the most likely to be available. I think that my order of preference is Fashanu, and then Latham and Mims is still really hard to pick. Latham is a guy that I think you could come in and he could be a solid pass protector for you right away. I thought he was very aware in college of where the different pass rushing threats came from in the passing game. I thought he was a very smart player. I thought his in play communication was really good. I think he has good bursts out of his set, even though he doesn't have good 40-yard dash type speed. I don't think he's a guy that you want pulling. I don't think he's going to do as good of a job getting to the second level as Mims could. I think Mims is a better mover in open space, but I think both of those players have really refined pass sets, really clean footwork. I really like Latham's hand usage and I like his hand placement for the most part. The biggest issue with probably most guys coming out is you're worried about for guys that move slower like Latham oversetting because he knows he has to get to the spot against wide alignments in the NFL and speed rushers and then getting beat back across his face inside because he can't recover quickly enough to get back inside and redirect those sorts of counter moves. So that's obviously the concern with Latham. Then Mims, I've just discussed the experience issue there. So assuming Fashanu is gone, if he's not, that's my pick. But if he is gone, then I'm trying to decide Latham Mims. I would probably lean upside in Mims as well, James, but I think there's a really strong argument there for Latham as well if he's available. And I think Fuanga, who neither of us have mentioned, is also in the conversation, but I lean toward the bigger body types here, the longer arms, the guys that I know some people are projecting Latham to guard, but not as many as think Fuanga's best fit in the NFL might be guard.
Why does everyone add an end to Fuaga? There's no end.
When he said his name in an interview with some NFL Network guys, that's where I heard.
Weird. Yeah, so weird. Like even in the Beast, it's Fuaga. Random. Because I know Joe's done that too. And I'm like, where's the end? So
we'll find out.
We'll find out if the
Bengals,
if the Bengals pick him, we'll certainly find out. We'll probably find out one way or the other anyways. It makes sense.
Oh, wait.
Look, taking an offensive tackle here makes sense. But wait, what?
We're not going to the second round.
Oh, okay.
I've got a trade to make.
Jake Lisco's trading up in his mock.
Yeah, the Bengals would never, but I would. I have seen in mocks from Dane Brugler, from Lance Zierlein, from Mel Kiper and Field Yates, Johnny Newton falling to the end of the first round. And I just don't get it. We've talked about Johnny Newton a ton. We've talked about the fact that we don't necessarily expect the Bengals to pick him, although maybe that top 30, I'm going to keep calling it that because Zach Taylor did visit that he reportedly took with the Bengals. Maybe that does mean that there's more interest there than we previously assumed. Hard to say. But
he's my preference at defensive tackle. If you're taking one at 18, by the way, that's who I would take. I would take Johnny Newton. Just putting that one out there.
His expected draft position, and that's fair. His expected draft position is 27. And I've seen him go 31 into the second round, 32. And I'm trading up with Tampa at 26. I'm trading a future first and 80 this year to get back into the first round. Tampa is the team I target there. I would do Arizona, but they have too many picks. I think Arizona is more likely to want to trade up than trade back. Maybe somebody else trades into 27 and I trade with whoever has a 27th pick. But I'm going to get Johnny Newton. And I'm going with a tackle, offensive, defensive combination in the first round. And getting bold here, James. And I'm keeping my second round pick. I'm keeping 1 third round pick. And I'm giving up next year's first, which to me is going to be a second, because the Bengals are putting themselves into position to win the Super Bowl, of course, with my Fantasyland mock here.
I love it. I mean, if you can add Johnny Newton and add a stud offensive tackle in Amarius Mims, I mean, you could look up in a few years and those two guys be near the top of their positions in the league. And so I get it. I love that you went the future first route, because we've seen that some of our listeners certainly have done that in their mock. So yeah, this is very is something I feel like I would do, but I did not do it. You did it. Jake Lisco moving up, getting Johnny Newton. I have a second round pick. You still have a second round pick. We will get to what we would do in the second round coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and the NFL draft is this week. So maybe you want to get in on some NFL futures bets, including the Bengals' chances of winning the AFC North. Well, you can do that before the draft right now with FanDuel. And Yes, playoff time in the NBA. It's the perfect time to get to FanDuel because new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slam dunks to slap shots. They have same game parlays, prop bets, and so much more. All you have to do is go to fanduel.com/locked on. That's fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet an automatic win when you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is also sponsored by Monopoly Go. And you might not know this about me. I am actually more competitive than it would seem for my persona on this podcast. James knows it from playing NFL Blitz on the old arcade machine when I last visited Cincinnati. But another way to exercise your competitive side when you don't have the NFL Blitz machine handy in the basement is Monopoly Go, which you've heard of by now. It's been downloaded over 150 million times and is a great twist on the classic Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities to bring yourself that big money. And you can mess with your friends. That's where the competitive aspect comes into this. You can charge them rent on your iconic properties, just like classic Monopolies. But now you can also heist their vault of riches for yourself. And the leaderboards will show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. Get in the game and join your friends today. Download Monopoly Go now for free in the App Store or on Google Play.
Round 2, Jake. Round 2 starts now. The Bengals have the 49th pick. And if you listen to this show, I think you know this pick too. It's pretty predictable for me. And I don't shy away from it. I'm sure you could guess this one. I would be in on Lad McConkey here. I don't think he's going to fall here. And I'll do that throughout our mock here of what we would do is name a player or two that I think could be in the range or that I would consider. But this is Troy Franklin season. If Troy Franklin's there at 49 and Dane Brugler has a second/third rounder on him in the beast, I think that one, the Bengals should consider him. Two, I would take him because he gives them a dynamic threat on the outside that can contribute right away and fits the T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki offense. He fits right away and can give them something that these other guys don't necessarily have. And yet you're not banking on him to have 90 catches as a rookie either. So I think that fit makes a ton of sense. And so I'm going offense here. Amarius Mims and Troy Franklin.
I'm also staying on the offensive side of the ball, but I've had a defensive pick with my second first-round pick. I know you love your wide receivers in the second round. Just to summarize the expected draft positions for Troy Franklin, a little bit later, 43, compared to Lad McConkey, who is up at 34. So there's a chance that both of those guys could be gone. Who's your fallback wide receiver here, or is there one?
Oh, if Franklin's not here, I might wait on receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. And I think that Chris Jenkins would be in play. The defensive tackle out of Michigan would be someone that I would consider here. I think that they would consider a trade down here potentially, depending on who's there. If the run happens and they don't have a first round grade on the guy at 49, because I do think that there's that scenario where they're like, oh, we can get like a low first round grade on one of these guys or early second. So yeah, we'll see. But in this, what we would do, I'm willing it. Troy Franklin is going to be there, Jake.
There you go.
They're going to take him.
So I am not looking at receiver here. I thought about it, but especially having given up a third round pick, I thought about it because I thought maybe I could get a receiver in the third round. Maybe I still can with 97, where maybe that's the last opportunity for some guys. But I'm looking interior offensive line here. And I land on Cooper Beebe, who has an expected draft position of 50, according to Benj Robinson's Grinding the Mocks. Zach Frazier is the other one that's in consideration here, who I think does have some center guard flexibility to his game, but an earlier EDP of 43 suggests that he might not make it. I think that defensive tackle also in consideration. Chris Jenkins, you mentioned, expected draft position for him at 45. So while you've seen him in mocks go a little bit later, I think for Chris Jenkins, also he's gone a little bit earlier. Dane Brugler has him going 35 to the Chargers. So maybe you can't get the perfect fit at defensive tackle here. Maybe they do really like Ruka Rororo and end up going that route. Maybe they really like a different defensive tackle, Braden Fisk, something like that. But I go interior offensive line here for I think ideally I like Zach Frazier a little bit better, but if you can't get him, I think Cooper Beebe can step in and has the upside to be a really good guard for you for a really long time. I think he can compete for a starting job this year, and then Alex Kappa is a free agent, and then he's competing certainly next year, and probably has a long-term starting job. The only downside to Beebe for me is that he's going to be a little bit older coming out at 23, but a two-time captain with really good data, good enough film grade to justify the pick to me. I am going heavy in the trenches here early, James, and I'm going to have to find all my skill players later.
Yeah, you are trench heavy, and people are going to love your mock. They're going to be in love with it. And I get it. I do. BB's a really good player. Addressing the interior offensive line is something that I'm going to do. Spoiler, but it's not at pick 80, because pick 80 is, and this is willful too. I think you think I'm pushing it a little bit. I think Michael Hall Jr. has a chance to go in round 2. I also think that there is a scenario where the Chris Jenkinses go and guys like that ahead of him. Maybe it is Rook Orororo goes ahead of him. And so I'm going to go with Michael Hall Jr. here. But here's what I would say. If the receiver isn't there in round 2, I'm probably targeting the Chris Jenkins or the defensive tackle there, or taking one certainly with this first, third round pick. I think that's the window. Second, third round, you want to land one of these guys and then double back later. So I have Michael Hall Jr. here falling, and I'm sure he's not consensus there, but I do think that there's a chance he falls to
It
pick
is
80.
a precipitous fall for Mike Hall, who, if they could get him in the third round, I think is a slam dunk pick. Consensus grade has him ranked at 67th. The EDP, the expected draft position board, doesn't go beyond the second round, and I didn't check to see where he was there. But Mike Hall in the Dane Brugler mock, just because it's another point of reference, is 43 to the Atlanta Falcons. If you can get him at 80, sign me up all day.
This happens all the time, though.
It
Like
does.
Osai was projected to be like a top 40 pick, and then he falls. Like, this happens a lot. It would
does.
not shock me.
And notably, just to mention, I don't have an 80th pick, so I don't get to talk here, but I'm going to talk anyway. Some offensive tackles around this pick for Dane Brugler: Roger Rosengarten, 78, Blake
Would be
Fisher,
shocked. I'd
84,
be shocked about
and
Rosengarten. That would be a shocker.
and the Yale offensive tackle Kieran, whose name I have not yet learned to pronounce, 85. So some tackles in that range, some running backs in that range too. If you wanted to go running back, Jalen Wright could have gone that way there. But let's get your third round wrapped up. Who do you got at 97?
Now it's time to address the interior of the offensive line. I've addressed the interior of the defensive line. Now I'm going to go with Tanner Bortolini. And I love this kid's game from Wisconsin. Elite athlete, 21 years old, and can play, has the versatility you're looking for, can literally be, let's say you don't want him to start right away and you feel comfortable with the starting interior offensive line. That's fine. He can back up all 3 spots, Karras, Kappa, and Volson. So you feel really good, I think, about adding a guy like that at pick 97. I would love it if they were able to, and that's certainly what I would do.
Big Pasta, immediate nickname.
Big Pasta.
Bortolini
I like it.
is not a pasta name, of course. That's somebody from Twitter. Sorry, I don't remember who you are. I'm sure you're a listener and you're upset that I don't remember your name right now. I apologize. The youngest of the interior offensive line options in this range. But while you went late on Mike Hall, the consensus rank has Tanner Bortolini 136th. So giving up that value back a little bit. I'm just curious where Dane has him, 117. So fourth rounder for Dane, late fourth rounder by consensus. If I can do math, 136, that's still fourth round. So you're going a little bit early there, but it's a comp third, essentially fourth anyway. Respect the getting a guy late, getting a guy early. I'm going opposite to you, where I went offensive line, where you went wide receiver. I'm going now wide receiver, where you went offensive line. I continue to see Javon Baker available in mock drafts at the end of the third round. And if he is,
Your guy.
that is the pick I'm making. I think there's easy wide receiver 2 upside there. There's a couple of flaws in the profile. Didn't get onto the field at Alabama. Has some inconsistency issues, but when he does put it together, is a playmaker downfield after the catch. The tested athleticism, not great, but the GPS data is strong for him. But James, we have an entire day 3 to get to here as well. You can react to my pick, and we'll get to day 3 coming up next. This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by Gametime, where ticket buying is easy. Now an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball. If you're looking for a place to get your Reds tickets where you're going to get views from your seat, you're going to get all-in prices, you're going to have a best price guarantee, you're going to get last-minute deals. Well, the guesswork isn't there with Gametime, who makes it so easy for you. It's getting warmer. Summer's around the corner. We've got full-on spring. I know here I would love to go see a baseball game. Unfortunately, don't have that option in Vancouver, but I can use it to go get tickets for a show outside. Check out the flash deals. Check out the zone deals. You're not going to risk your money with that lowest price guarantee. And I love the views from my seat as well with Gametime. You can get $20 off your purchase right now when you download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Today's show is brought to you by Schultz Jewelers. Mother's Day is right around the corner, and you have to get to Schultz Jewelers because right now they have exactly what you're looking for mom, or maybe for your wife, or maybe your wife is looking for something for her mom. Schultz Jewelers is going to have it for you. They have a wide selection of sterling silver. They have gold filled. They have solid gold. And right now you can get a professional candid photo done with you and your mom. If you're looking for fine jewelry, if you're looking for that perfect piece, Schultz Jewelers is going to have it. And you can find them at 2202 Dixie Highway in Fort Mitchell, just 5 minutes from the bridge into Kentucky. Also online at schultzdiamonds.com. That's SCHULZ diamonds.com. We know the Bengals are striving for perfection this week in the draft. Well, Schultz Jewelers does too, because when it has to be perfect, it has to be Schultz Jewelers.
Day 3, James. We've got, a lot of day 3 picks. I don't know if I'm making all the day 3 picks. Well, maybe I figured it out. We'll see if we have 7th rounders here to discuss, but
we do. I do. It's a big part of my draft.
Big part.
Hell yeah, it's a big part. Picks
Keeping
matter,
those 7th
Jake.
rounders. Yeah, no, I'm trading them. I'm going to get my punter. Who do you got in the 4th round?
Yeah, that's silly. They should not draft a punter this year, and I would not. Audric Estime is the guy. In this is why I knew I want Bordellini and I want Estime. Neither one's going to be there in round 5. You got to take one early, and so whether it's Estime in round 4, Bordellini in round 4. That's why I took Bordellini early. I think he'll be in higher demand. Estime has age on his side, size. I think he's going to fit perfect in this backfield and give them that power back early on that complements Zach Moss, that complements Chase Brown. So Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, sign me up. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, just stay tuned because I got another Notre Dame pick coming.
Wow. Spoilers. Tease it.
Yeah.
I also land on Audric Estime here. He is one of the younger guys that I think you could get in this range. Consensus rank 110. Have seen him go after this in a number of mock drafts. I think that it is realistic. Can develop into a souped-up Samaje Perine, who's a little bit bigger. Has good wiggle to his game. Has made guys miss at 5'11", 220. Good density. And he honestly fits what the Bengals like too. In terms of several of their thresholds, the only one that's slightly off is he didn't run a good 40. And that does hurt him. I think that's probably why he's available here at this point. But despite the somewhat limited athleticism, I think you've got that athletic upside in Chase Brown, and you've got a good complementary back that really fits what you're trying to do in Audric Estime, who can develop as a pass rusher, who can be a power back, and who still can make guys miss. And that is on tape. So if you can get Audric Estime in the 4th round, and it seems like you can, maybe he just goes earlier. Maybe people are just too low on some of these running backs, but Jalen Wright gone, Trey Benson gone, Jonathan Brooks gone, of course. One of the next guys I would look at would be Audric Estime. And so I'm in agreement with you here at 115.
4 of my first 5 picks have been offense, but defense wins the rest of the way for me. And with pick 149, I'm taking Cam Hart out of Notre Dame. I think that the Bengals would love to add a trait seat corner like this that has the size, that has it checks all of those boxes. And no, I think he's played in big games. He's been matched up against Marvin Harrison Jr. And so adding someone like that at this stage, sign me up all day long. And I think the Bengals would sign up for it too. And it might be a different corner here, but this is around the range where I'm looking at corner. Early day 3, I think there are going to be some good corners that fall.
And when you get to day 3 is when you start to have wider ranges of outcomes for players. Cam Hart for Dane Brugler is in the 4th round, so maybe he's not there in the 5th. Maybe they've got to go for the guy that I'm targeting in the 6th. As a spoiler there a little bit, I'm going to go to corner in the 6th round. Maybe you would have to take him in the 5th round, but since I didn't have that extra 3rd round pick, James, well, I do think a day 3 corner makes sense. I don't really see it in the 2nd round this year, maybe in the 3rd round. I'm pining for that tight end that I didn't get in the 3rd round, where if you could get Ben Sinnott, if he actually makes it to pick 80, that's one that I would be targeting. I don't know if I would do it at 49. I would do it maybe in a trade back scenario in the 2nd round. But since I did not get my tight end there, I'm going Jaheim Bell in the 5th, where he continues to be available in mock drafts. And if you can get him, a guy that has a great track record of making guys miss, I thought looked more athletic on tape than, potential earlier round tight end Jatavion Sanders, and tested with 84.5 percentile athleticism. So pretty good there, but productive player. I think you could put him in a somewhat alignment versatile role where he can play some fullback for you as well. He's a little bit smaller, so that is not in his favor, but the ability to make guys miss after the catch is what I'm targeting here. And he's also, I believe, one of the younger players that you could get later. He's 23, but a lot of the tight ends that you can target later in this draft are 24 plus. And so when you get to day 3, you lose on the age a little bit with tight end, but he at least brings the rest of the profile, does Jaheim Bell, who, as a tight end, brings some exciting run after catch upside, and that's what I'm looking for here.
For sure, no doubt. If he's there and Cam Hart isn't, I would certainly be in the mix and in on him, and that's a really good pick, and I think that'll be a popular pick for a lot of Bengals fans this week as they continue to do mocks. Back to offense I go, and it's Big Ten this time, and it's another offensive tackle. I want some depth, and if Caden Wallace is still there, I'm in on Caden Wallace, and I think he could be there. Dane Brugler has him 4th round. In other mocks, he goes 6th round, 7th round. I would be really comfortable taking him here with the first 6th round pick, and it's my second to last offensive player that I'm adding. I have one more that I'm going to add, but Caden Wallace, they will obviously have looked at him after all the Fashion Who tape at Penn State, and I would take him at this range if he's there at 194.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. I'm going to the corner here. I do like the double down on offensive tackle idea. I'm going corner. I'm going to the CFL. I'm going to a non-traditional path in Quantez Stiggers, who actually had a visit with the Bengals. My guy, Ben Grant, who covers the Argonauts in Toronto, also a Bengals fan, put me on to Stiggers as a guy who is NFL ready, had a non-traditional path, went straight into the CFL. He can handle his game as a professional. He's been playing professional football. Ben tells me he's been watching him. He covers the Argonauts. He played for the Argonauts. NFL level movement ability, NFL level ball skills. He's going to need to learn a bit of a different game in the NFL, obviously. CFL, NFL, press coverage, receivers moving forward at the line of scrimmage. Those things don't really jive in the CFL. So a different skill set, a developmental player to be sure. But I think with the Bengals having some interest here in Stiggers and good enough athleticism, good enough size, I'm interested in taking that flyer. And I live in Canada, so I'm going for a guy who's played some football up here in my What Would I Do mock.
Yeah, I get it. I like it a lot. Makes a lot of sense, and I could totally see the Bengals targeting him in this range, taking a flyer on that. Like, just describing him, I'm like, oh, that's what they've done. They've done that with the Chris Evanses. They've done that with Andre Yosavash, where they're taking the stab at that type of guy. Now, there's no real comparison because he was playing professional football, but the upside is there, I would say, at that stage. And with me, with the final 3 picks, I'm going to combine all of them because it's that second, 6th rounder and then 2 7ths. I keep all of the picks, and I keep them because I think I can get valuable players there. And I want a Jalen Coker out of Holy Cross, double down at wide receiver. And so that's who I'm taking with the 8th pick and that last 6th round pick. And then at defensive tackle, James, you've only gotten Michael Hall Jr. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to get Jawan Briggs from the University of Cincinnati, and then you're going to double back with that 2nd, 7th and say, Evan Anderson, welcome to the Cincinnati Bengals. Jawan Briggs, Evan Anderson, Michael Hall Jr., 3 defensive tackles, 3 guys that can help, 3 guys that I think can help this year. And Jalen Coker is the other late rounder who is more of a developmental guy, could be back end of the receiver room. And you hope he's Andre Yosavash, right? Where he can develop, hit the ground running, and maybe ahead of where you project him to be.
Yeah, I like those names a lot. I'll throw out some others. Jordan Jefferson from LSU, wide range of outcomes for him in day 3. If he's available in the 6th round, that's a guy that I would target at nose tackle. If they want to go get a punter, I know you said it's a waste, and I'm inclined to agree. They probably could do this as a priority free agent, but Ryan Reckow from BYU, a guy that Dane Brugler has actually mocked to the Bengals as a late round punter, and Giovanni Manu, the BC tackle, who we've talked about on the show, also mocked by Dane Brugler to the Cincinnati Bengals, a guy that I'll mention in the late rounds as well. I'll also throw out Dijon Anthony, the Ole Miss safety with whom we know the Bengals had a visit. You mentioned Evan Anderson, Dwight McGlothern from Arkansas, another player with whom we know the Bengals had a visit. Chow Smith Wade, an undersized corner that Mike Renner really liked at the Senior Bowl, a guy that Dane Brugler has going in the 7th round that I'd be interested in as well. And Logan Lee, Iowa interior defensive lineman, another one that in the 7th round I think is more than worth the dart throw. So there's a number of late round names for you. I don't know which ones, specifically I would take a combination of those guys perhaps, but there you go. Do you have the full mocks here ready to recap, James, before we get out of here? I can do mine.
I'm ready to go real quick. Amarius Mims, Troy Franklin, Michael Hall Jr., Tanner Bortolini, Audric Estime, Cam Hart, Caden Wallace, Jalen Coker, Jawan Briggs, Evan Anderson. And I think you hit a lot of the boxes with that mock. I didn't get a tight end. Obviously, I would be in on a tight end. Ben Sinnott, if he's there at 80, I would be all in on that. Jaheim Bell is obviously someone on day 3 that you got that I would target, certainly. And then obviously, if Brock Bowers falls, I'm in on him at 18. So it's not a hate against tight end, but I'm not going to force it in this year's class. And I don't want the Bengals to do that. There's only a few guys that I would consider taking at tight end.
Yeah, the only other tight end that I think is even worth really mentioning on day 3, well, Tip Ryman and, they've obviously met with Eric All, but Tanner McLaughlin as well is an interesting one on day 3. My mock gets crazy in the 1st round with that trade, future first and 80 for 26. And then I go in order, Fashanu, Latham, Mims, Latham. One of those tackles is going to be the guy at 18. Ideally, one falls. Otherwise, probably Mims. I'm probably in agreement with you there. Johnny Newton, Cooper Beebe, solidifying the trenches there to start the draft before I switch over to some skill position players. Javon Baker at the back of the 3rd. We agree on Audric Estime in the 4th. Jaheim Bell, if you can get him in the 5th, give me that all day. Quantez Stiggers, the CFL corner who Ben Grant, my guy, describes as a 3rd round talent who's going to fall because he's had a non-traditional path. And then if you can get a Jordan Jefferson, a Giovanni Manu from BC, or Evan Anderson or Dwight McGlothern, one of those developmental players, I'm interested in the 7th round. Sure. Sign me up. And you can let us know whose mock you like more in the comments on Twitter, on X.
Yours. Getting Newton and Mims. No, I mean, that wins it. You get 2 studs. It should be yours. It obviously would be hard to pull off, but if they can, they would.
You give up the future 1st round pick, though. Maybe the people really don't like that. I don't know. I
I
think
think
it's
the
the
people really
32nd
like
pick next year if you do that plan, though. That's all I'm saying.
Johnny Newton. I think they like Johnny Newton. I think that's
Yeah.
what they like.
Yeah, easy to like Johnny Newton. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. A ton of draft preview content coming for you this week, including, well, several interviews of what do we think they will do, mock draft, and all the rest before the draft arrives on Thursday. Until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.